Hey sports fans, this is Lily King. Make sure you tune into Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
And leave tomorrow behind. Ooh,
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat, of course, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios in Bloomington. Joined now by our good friend, the guru of Indiana football recruiting, Matt Weaver from Peaks.com. Matthew, how are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. Does things ever slow down for you? I mean, it's just like there's always something going on, and you are on top of it like nobody. And I can't imagine that leaves you much time to not do much.
Yeah, there's it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. I mean, there's, it recruiting's become, 24/7, 365, days a year. It's, so that really never slows down. I mean, there's points where it's a little bit slower than other times, but, guys commit at all different times of the year. And, there's a lot of times where visits are going on or coaches are on the road. So it's just the way it is. College athletics is that way nowadays. And, so it's still fun. It's not quite as busy as the season. Thankfully, you get a little bit of a break from that. But it's interesting, and recruiting's going well, and could have some commitments coming up here soon, and then June could be a really busy month as far as recruiting and commitments go.
And there have been a ton of commitments we've seen going out, and the staff has done an unbelievable job. We've talked about it ad nauseum, how good they've done. I mean, it's really surprising. But that continues, and that can only bode well for Indiana in the near future. They've got a new offensive coordinator, as everyone knows, so we're looking forward to that. They've got a great quarterback room, but they're not resting on their laurels. They're trying to land a quarterback for 2020 in that class, and because I've talked about that, most schools like to carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster, and Indiana's at 3 right now. And you don't want to get out of sync, because that had been a problem at that position of them getting out of sync, of not having guys in classes. And one of the guys they're looking at is Dimitri Crenshaw from Pinkerton, Ohio, who looks like to be a good prospect for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, Dimitri had an offer, has an offer from Indiana. Now it was made when Mike DeBoer was the O coordinator, Nick Sheridan was the quarterback's coach. And then obviously when Kalen DeBoer came in, took over OC and the quarterback's job, he wants to kind of reevaluate, and he had never seen Dimitri throw live. He's watched his film, and his film's obviously really good, but he went over last Thursday to watch him throw, and by all accounts, Dimitri was very impressive. And now where he stands as far as, is his offer now committable? Is it not? I think that's still to be determined. I think Kalen DeBoer is just kind of doing his due diligence, and there's other guys he's evaluating. They offered him Mekhi Hagans from over by St. Louis back in the spring. So there's another guy they're looking at. Actually talked to an interesting prospect yesterday, and I'll have a story on him this week. His name's Hunter Dekkers, Dekkers from Hawarden, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Iowa, way over in the western part of the state, basically on the South Dakota state line. And he's a guy that got tipped off to Coach DeBoer by a guy that he kind of knew from his days in South Dakota, and he's good friends with. And this guy trains Hunter, lefty quarterback, put up just kind of like pinball machine type stats. His team's won the last 2 state titles, like a 4-star athlete over there, and went to the Elite 11 regional camp in St. Louis. Really interesting prospect. Doesn't have a lot of big offers, but schools are starting to sniff around, like Michigan State, Ohio State, UCLA, Indiana, obviously. So I think if it's not Dimitri, it could be this kid from over in Iowa. We'll see what happens, but getting a quarterback, like you said, is important, especially with the way quarterbacks are moving around anymore with obviously the transfers and guys getting unhappy. I mean, the chances that Jack Tuttle and Michael Penix are both on the roster for the next 4 years is probably not high if you just go by what's going on in college football, because one guy's not going to win the job and the other guy's probably going to want to play and at some point, one of them is probably going to move on. I mean, that's not a rumor. I'm just saying you just look at the way college football is with quarterbacks and guys getting real antsy when they're not playing. That's just a safe bet is what that is. I mean, it's just more likely going to happen. You'd love to keep them both, but you got to think about that as a coach. Hey, this could be what happens, and we got to have a contingency plan and kind of a thing in place so that we're prepared for it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, you're hitting that nail dead on the head. And do you think that last year, Michael Penix probably should have been starting and playing, but that didn't happen. But would he have the advantage right now if he'd have been able to have that year over Jack Tuttle, you think?
He somewhat, although, with the new OC, I think to me everybody kind of starts at ground zero because it's a new system. But I think if you would, the more experience he would have got, the better. Obviously, the better would have been, and a little bit more advantage he would have had. And then if he doesn't get hurt, the injury kind of threw a monkey wrench in that. If let's just go into the assumption that he plays more but doesn't get hurt, then I mean I don't want to say he's a clear cut guy, but I think he was on his way to taking over that job last year. That's just my opinion. I think if he doesn't get hurt in that Penn State game, I think at the very least, I think Michael Penix basically it almost becomes a 2 quarterback deal. But I wouldn't have been shocked if he would have taken over that job as the season went along, and it would have been his by the end of the year. That's my gut feel. But if that happens, then everything looks different this spring. And I'm not saying they don't get Jack Tuttle. Who knows? Maybe he sees something different because it's but the way it played out, it's kind of wide open even with Peyton Ramsey coming back. And that it's not so much set in stone who the guy is going to be. But it's, obviously that's all speculation and we're just kind of guessing. But, I would have liked, we talked about it all the time last fall. We both thought at the very least Penix needed to be getting more snaps. Whether he was a starter or not is, people can argue about that, or should have been the starter. But I don't think there's any argument that he probably should have been getting more snaps, especially as the season went along, because I think we saw in the Penn State game what he does to a game. I mean, he completely changed how Penn State played defensively with one throw, and that's what he would have done in a lot of other games. And who knows? I'm not saying it would have made a difference, but you never know. It's now it's this year, but man, it would have been nice to see him get a handful more snaps in each game last year.
Yeah, and you mentioned the kid that's a left-handed quarterback. Is it Penix that's left-handed? Because somebody's left-handed, I think.
Yeah, Penix is left-handed, and I don't know that that's why they're recruiting him. I think he's just a good player, good baseball player, good basketball player, runs track. 6'2", 220. He's got some size to him. In his career there, he's thrown for like 7,000 yards in 3 years. He ran for almost 600 last year. 48 touchdown passes last year, 10 interceptions. He ran for 7 touchdowns. So, like I said, putting up like video game type stats. I don't know the competition, but it's Western Iowa. It's a smaller town, but he's dominating like a guy should dominate and getting invited to the Elite 11 regional. He didn't make it to the finals, but to get invited just to the regionals as a quarterback, that's a big deal. I mean, somebody recognized his talent, and he got invited, and that shows that he's well thought of. Like I said, bigger schools are starting to sniff around and come in and watch him throw. He seems excited about Indiana, and I think if they offer, they're going to have a real good shot to land him.
Yeah, I only mentioned the left-handed things. You don't see a ton of left-handed quarterbacks, and I can't imagine in a game there's got to be some difference if there's a change in the game where you have a right-handed quarterback and a left-handed quarterback because the ball comes out, the passing is just a little different, but when it gets to your hands, I guess it's all the same.
Yeah, the spin's different because it's coming a different. The ball's spinning a different way. The other thing is how do you set up? Like if you do read option plays, or you want your guy to roll out, then it kind of changes. It does. It's kind of a reverse as far as, if you have a guy who you're going to do a rollout play and you want him to roll it to his strong side, then obviously that kind of changes. It also may change, there's not really a blind side in college football anymore with a lot of programs because the guy's in a shotgun. So he's already staying in 3, 4, 5 yards back. And he's already, he can see everything. It's not like under center when once the guy takes a snap, he turns his back to the left side if he's right-handed or to the right side. But you may want to change who your right tackle is. Maybe you would put your better O lineman on the right side if you had a lefty quarterback. Because when he does have to turn his shoulders at some point to throw. But I just don't feel like the blind side like it used to be in the old days when everybody was under center and that kind of deal. But stuff like that, that's not huge stuff. And I don't think if you play Michael Penix or if you're playing Jack Tuttle and then Michael Penix comes in, I don't think it's not like you have to overhaul the offense. You just some of the plays may be go a different direction. Instead of going to the right side, you go to the left side with Michael Penix. But that's tweaking. That's not a big deal. And you're not, and that's probably not. It's like just a wrinkle. It's not. That shouldn't be any kind of issue with any of the players. Like I said, the biggest thing is just get used to maybe catching the ball, spinning differently. But if you can catch a football, you can catch a football. That shouldn't matter.
Absolutely. Also, I noticed that the offer just went out to a familiar name for Indiana, Cameron Knight, whose brother Brandon Knight just finished up 3 solid years playing for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, not as big as his brother Brandon. Cameron isn't. He's around 6'3". He's an interior lineman all the way. And really, Brandon, he signed on with the Dallas Cowboys, undrafted free agent. That's where in the NFL, that's what he'll be. He may be able to play a little bit of tackle in the NFL in a pinch, but his primary position. I talked to to Darren Hiller, the O-line coach, a few different times about this, and he thinks that Brandon has a chance to be a really good NFL player as a center. He thinks his feet, his athleticism translates well to that position. Just what he needs is kind of like a redshirt year where being on the practice squad for Dallas would probably be ideal, where he can work on being an interior lineman, maybe being a center and work on snapping the ball. But Cameron's already that guy. Hiller likes his interior guys to be able to play guard and center. If I had a pigeonhole in one position, I'd say, my guess is center for him. But that's just my guess. I haven't talked to Cameron and, see what they've been saying to him. But he's a guy that obviously they like, and they got the great connection. And, I don't know what his timetable is, but it wouldn't be shocking if he doesn't commit in, the not too distant future. I think, I think this is the kind of offer that could probably get him to jump on it and add him to the 20 class.
We've seen some big hits by the Indiana recruiting this year. Tom Allen doing a superior job, like we said. Any big surprises potentially in the offing coming? Any big hits that could come?
Well, they're still recruiting, even though the shift for the most part is focused 2020. They're still recruiting. I've talked about this before. They're still recruiting for the upcoming season, and they had a kid on campus this past weekend, DeMarcus Elliott from Garden City Community College in Garden City, Kansas. He's actually from that town. That's where he grew up, and he had a gray shirt offer out. He's a qualifier. He went to JUCO because I just don't think he liked his options out of high school. He had a gray shirt offer from Kansas State, which people who aren't familiar with gray shirt is basically you enroll, you're a part-time student, you pay your own way that first semester, and then in January you get moved to a scholarship player and you become full-time. So essentially you go to the next recruiting class. So if you're like a 2019 recruit and you did that, you would actually become a 2020 recruit because you start in January, almost like a mid-year guy. So he turned that down. Indiana, Kansas offered him. West Virginia, Iowa State, and Rutgers all wanted him to visit. I would assume that they probably would have offered. He visited this past weekend, was scheduled to visit Kansas upcoming weekend. I'm hearing good things with him. It wouldn't be shocking if he doesn't pull the trigger at some point in the near future. I think Indiana could. He's 6'4", 300, could play some nose tackle. So he's a guy you could rotate with Juan Harris. Obviously, you got Jerome Johnson inside too. They lost Braden Wilson yesterday to the transfer portal. A little bit unexpected there, but if you could add a DeMarcus Elliott, that really more than makes up for losing Braden Wilson. It gives you an experienced guy who's played beyond high school with some good size and athleticism there in the middle of your D line.
Garden City, Kansas. If you're a fan of Last Chance U, the Netflix show, they were one of the teams that played Independence, Kansas, which was the focus of that series now, currently. And they were coached by, I think it was Jeff Sims that used to be at Indiana.
Yeah, I know Jeff Sims. Coach Sims is a friend of mine. He was actually at IU twice. He was on Coach Wilson's kind of his initial staff. And Coach Wilson had known him from his days at Oklahoma because, Oklahoma they recruit some JUCOs, and, obviously Kansas, they're not that far away. And then he got a job as an assistant with Carl Pelini, Bo Pelini's brother. When he got the FAU job, things went south there. So he came back to IU for a year and then got offered the head coaching job and did a great job at Garden City. And now I think he's left there. I think he got a job at a smaller, like a Division II, or I don't know if it's 1 double, or the FCS, whatever they call it now, but it's a school in Missouri, and the name escapes me. I apologize, but good guy. Always enjoyed working with him, and happy that he got an opportunity at a 4-year program, because I know that's what he was looking for. And like I said, he did a great job in Garden City, and before that, he was at Fort Scott, which is another JUCO in Kansas, and was really successful there. Put a lot of guys at 4-year schools, and even had some guys go on to the NFL. Same thing at Garden City. He had a bunch of guys. I mean, he really knows how to coach and develop talent, and hopefully does great at his next job. But yeah, there's that connection. And I don't know who the new coach is at Garden City. I don't have a relationship with him, but from what I'm hearing, he thinks IU would be a great spot for DeMarcus. So if it works out for Indiana, it could be a really nice kind of under the radar late ad. And then Brandon Pierce, wide receiver from College of the Canyons, who visited. It's been almost 2 weeks now. Has offers from Oklahoma and some other schools. Smaller guy, 5'10", 175, but can absolutely fly like a 4.3, 140. They should know something on him before the end of the month, because he would start. He would also come this year, and he would start around June 1st. So could be a couple late ads here for Indiana at and guys who could really impact the team this year. Going forward, it just shows you the job that this staff has done, kind of overhauling and revamping this roster under Tom Allen. It's really been impressive. And, if you could add these two guys, that would be a really nice boost and really nice additions for the upcoming season.
Absolutely. Did Morgan Allison end up out at Independence, Kansas, at that school?
Yeah, that's where he's at. He's going to be. I don't know if there's. I don't know who got picked for the last chance U, but yeah, that's where he ended up, and I'm sure he'll do great. Morgan's obviously a talented guy, and good spot for him to kind of rehab himself and kind of get himself back up into a 4-year school after this upcoming season.
We'll certainly find out. Matt Weaver, the guru of Indiana football recruiting for Pigs.com. Can't thank you enough, brother. Always enjoy talking to you.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Matt Weaver from Pigs.com, our guru when it comes to IU football recruiting. Always grateful to have Matthew on. Hey, thanks for listening to the rebroadcast from today's edition of Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle, the only daily show dedicated to Indiana University athletics. You can catch us live each weekday on IndianaSportsBeat.com, TheDailyHoosier.com, GruelingTruth.com, or go to Spreaker.com for live notifications. Yeah, that's speaker with an R, SPREAKER.com. You can also catch the entire show any place you listen to a podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, etc. You can find and follow the show on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at Jim Coyle ISB for complete coverage of the Indiana Hoosiers. Thanks again. I hope you have a great day. I'm Jim Coyle, and I will see you on the radio.